Cyberpunk 2077 wasn't just a bad launch. It was so broken that Sony literally pulled it from their store and offered to refund every single copy. Let that sink in. A AAA game with 8 million pre-orders and a $131 million marketing budget was essentially banned from PlayStation. But here's the thing nobody saw coming. That's not where the story ends. To understand how far it fell, you have to understand how high it was. Off the back of The Witcher 3, CD Projekt Red were the gold standard, the good guys, the studio that actually cared about players. So when they announced Cyberpunk 2077, the internet lost its mind. This wasn't just a game, it was a cultural event. Keanu Reeves on stage at E3, 8 million pre-orders, a city that would change gaming forever. The hype was real, and it made the fall so much worse. When the clock struck midnight on December 10th, 2020, everything collapsed. PC players got a flawed but beautiful game. Everyone else? They got a nightmare. On last-gen consoles, frame rates dropped to single digits. NPCs T-posed in the streets. Cars spawned out of thin air. Night City, promised to be the most immersive world ever built, felt like a broken screensaver. Reddit exploded. Clips of flying cars, invisible walls, and game-breaking bugs flooded every corner of the internet. Some players couldn't even finish the tutorial without crashing. Players weren't just disappointed, they were furious. And the problems went deeper than bugs. The police system was basically non-existent. Life path choices barely mattered. Features shown in trailers simply weren't there. It wasn't just broken, it was missing. The backlash was instant and brutal. Within a week, Sony made an almost unprecedented decision. Cyberpunk 2077 was delisted from the PlayStation Store. Gone. CDPR's stock tanked. Class action lawsuits followed. The studio that had spent a decade building trust with players had burned it down in 7 days. Behind closed doors, it was even worse. Developers had been working mandatory 6-day weeks for months, crunch so severe it made headlines. And while those devs were running on empty, players were flooding support lines demanding refunds, and getting them. The studio that was supposed to change gaming had become a cautionary tale. Most people wrote them off. Game over. But CD Projekt Red refused to let Night City die. The first patches were quiet, foundational. Nobody was impressed. Then, in 2022, something unexpected happened. Netflix released Cyberpunk Edge Runners, a 10-episode anime set in Night City, and it was brilliant. Suddenly, millions of people who had given up on the game went back. Player counts spiked back to launch levels, not because the game was fixed, but because people remembered why they cared. That was the spark. What came next was the explosion. September 2023, Update 2.0. This wasn't a patch, it was a resurrection. Skill trees completely rebuilt. Armor decoupled from fashion, finally letting you look like a mercenary without sacrificing stats. Enemy AI overhauled from the ground up. And most importantly, the city finally had a pulse. A real police system, vehicular combat, dynamic chaos in the streets. This wasn't just an update, one reviewer wrote. It was the game they promised in 2018. And then came Phantom Liberty, a full expansion starring Idris Elba set in the lawless district of Dogtown. The spy thriller narrative, the impossible choices, the world-class voice acting. Critics who had buried the game 3 years earlier were now calling it a masterpiece. Not just good for what it is, a masterpiece. Full stop. By January 2025, Cyberpunk 2077 had achieved something almost no game ever has. It climbed all the way to overwhelmingly positive on Steam. 35 million copies sold, one of the best-selling RPGs of all time. Winner of Best Ongoing Game at the Game Awards 2023. From the most embarrassing launch in modern gaming history to the podium. But here's what makes this story bigger than one game. Cyberpunk 2077 didn't just survive its disaster, it became the blueprint for how to come back from one. It proved that a broken game with the right team and enough stubbornness can become something extraordinary. Night City wasn't finished in 2020, it was just early access.